All right, so welcome back. We've actually got some breaking news for you in this hour. We do understand that 7 people have been killed at Kanana in Kuetu. We're not sure what the circumstances are relating to that shooting. We will be crossing to our colleagues, Mariska Buerta, who is on her way to that scene. We'll bring you the latest once we have more information pertaining to that. All right, let's go to part of the stories that have been dominating this week, and it's been a politically charged week in the country, marked by legal battles, internal party tensions and shifting alliances. Floyd Shivambu's apology to the MK party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndhlela, the former President Jacob Zuma's court bid against the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa and his party, and the sudden firing of the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition, and the looming deadline at 3 o'clock this afternoon. In fact, the DA is going to be having a press conference at 3 o'clock this afternoon on what its way forward will be following those developments. Let's speak now to SABC News politics editor Mzwandile Mbeje. Mzwai, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Whew. What a week.
Quite a lot.
Right? What a lot. I've been watching you give commentary on all these things, but
yeah.
I think let's start with 3 o'clock. We're expecting the Democratic Alliance to have that press briefing.
Yes.
Are they going to go? Are they not going to go? I don't know how to read from what John Steenhuisen said, what Whitfield had said when he was interviewed by our colleague Clement Manyatela.
Yeah.
I don't know what to read from it. What are we likely to hear? Because there is an ultimatum that has been put in place. President Cyril Ramaphosa must fire compromised ministers. What can we expect?
Well, I think the deadline is at 2:30.
2:30. Hence the press conference at 3.
And the press conference is at 3. So, but clearly the president yesterday in his statement made it clear that, he cannot be told by people who serve in his executive what to do. That tells you that he's actually not even going to bother about that. But this, Griselda, talks to a bigger issue. Remember, we are in a coalition arrangement known as the GNU currently. So these political tensions tell you that perhaps all is not well. Perhaps that's exactly the reason why they decided to up the ante to say they give the president the ultimatum, which is a bit unheard of and quite interesting. So the question now, as you've asked, what if the deadline is not met, which in all likelihood is not going to be met.
Yeah,
so,
judging by the tone of the presidency's statement yesterday.
He made it clear. And so do you then walk out? And then if you walk out, remember, part of the reasons, you even said it when you were in the United States with the president, part of the reason is to prevent some of the parties that you don't want to be in government. Because if you walk out, you then open the door for others to come in.
Yes.
And there are many who are ready to walk in. So is that the option you take? If you don't take that option, so your bluff has been called. So what do? You've just said, here's the ultimatum, it doesn't happen. Or you then, like they indicated, Griselda, mentioning 3 ministers, minister and deputy ministers, to say there are these who are compromised. But you also have to be a bit more careful there, because they haven't been to court. They haven't been charged with anything. So clearly, these, by the way, are your colleagues in cabinet and in the executive, and then that's how you are speaking. So what do you want the president who presides over all of you to do when some within his company, within his executive, start to speak against each other? So clearly, at this rate, and knowing what is coming from the side of the ANC and how many in the ANC are perhaps thinking maybe we have to take a hard line.
Sure.
So the 3 o'clock meeting will be very important.
Yeah, and there would obviously need to be, the ANC NEC is sitting
On the 12th.
On the 12th, yes. There would need to be that consultative process that well, not consultative process, but President Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the ANC president, would obviously need to speak to his colleagues about what a possible way forward would be. And there's also the replacement then of Whitfield. From one of the statements that we saw, no indication of what we could refer to as a wholesale cabinet reshuffle.
Yeah.
But what are we likely to see over the next couple? The 12th is a bit far.
Yeah, and I think the 3 o'clock press briefing of the DA may actually hasten that process, because what the president did, Griselda, before he even fired the deputy minister, he reached out to John Steenhuisen, who's the leader of the DA, to say, this is the action I'm taking. Please give me your replacement, because that slot is reserved for you. But of course, they didn't do that. And then they obviously felt, I think the president was motivated by other means other than what he probably had said. So clearly, if then the line or the decision at 3 is to walk away, or perhaps to say things that may not necessarily be liked elsewhere, so you are likely to raise tensions within the GNU, perhaps forcing the hand of the president. Yes, the president is the leader of the ANC. Yes, they are meeting next week. But as the president of the republic, we must always, perhaps remind the viewers that as the president of the republic, he has the prerogative
to hire and fire
granted to him by the constitution. Yes, he became the president. There was a coalition arrangement, GNU arrangement, but he is the president. So the decisions he takes are the decisions, and are the decisions of his and his alone, because that's what the constitution says. But because of the nature of the arrangement, he obviously will engage. So him meeting his colleagues in the ANC in the next 2 weeks, they are likely to impress upon him to say, remember, that's where he can also be called by his own party to account. They can ask questions, and then they can also make an input. That is where perhaps some of the thinking post that meeting may then perhaps go in a particular direction. If the DA would have perhaps called or made statements that are too difficult to accept, I'm not ruling out the possibility, perhaps in the coming weeks, of a reshuffle. Because if they walk out, so he's forced anyway to do it.
Yes. Let's move on to the next one. The former ANC president, former president of the country, now leading the MKP party, taking the ANC to court, wants to remain in the ANC, but run his own political party. What is going on? What is going on?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting because here, I think former President Zuma still wants to remain a member of the ANC. He characterizes it the real ANC.
But that's what he said initially.
Yes. So, and then I think that's why he is taking the ANC to court. But what I find a bit interesting is that in his own party, you have the Secretary General who has somehow been sidelined from that role.
Right.
And then he is busy setting up his own political party. I mean, let's just call it
what it is,
yes,
right?
Political party, but also he remains the member of the MK. So it's quite interesting. I think the politics of South Africa is very interesting.
And let's talk about that as well, because we saw this was quite a quick consultative process.
Yeah.
I mean, just the other day, Floyd Shivambu was saying he's going to consult. Look, forgive me for being naive, but I thought that, it will take a bit longer. But then we've seen, I'd be forgiven for thinking that this had actually started some time ago, because there are quite senior, I saw some former MKP members from Mpumalanga, for example, that were also photographed at that press conference by Floyd Shivambu. Who else was there? The pastor.
So Pastor Zondo. There was quite a number of people.
Quite a number of people. I mean, talk to us a bit about that and the speed at which this process is actually taking shape.
The politics of South Africa is a very interesting politics. I mean, I normally say whoever said South Africa is alive with possibility, saw something that we didn't. That's exactly what we are as a country. I think as soon as Floyd was removed from his position as the SG of the MK and then promised the position to go to Parliament, but still that didn't happen. And he probably felt, well, so that is the way of me being yanked out of the party. Perhaps given who I am, the expertise, the experience, and maybe let me start something else. And also he's been very vocal to say the current setup of the political parties, maybe the MK, which he's a member of, he is basically saying allowing a party to be run by family, it's actually not sustainable. I mean, to quote him, he says the MK in its current configuration is not the party to take this country forward. Because he was making an example to say you can make decisions as the national leadership, but then over the table at a dinner, perhaps at home, some of those get changed. So I think that's part of his frustration. And you also heard him say there have been attempts to reach out to him from the MK party leader, but of course he said he will go and appraise him, but this process has started.
It's continuing.
So, and remember, all this is happening perhaps with speed because next year we have
local government elections.
And everyone wants
a bite of that, right?
Exactly. So if then you want something, so you've got to get moving now so that you can start campaigning. So it looks like...
What is that saying? There are no permanent friends.
No permanent friends.
In
no
politics.
Permanent, yes.
And enemies.
Only permanent interests.
I like that.
Yeah.
Mzwandile Mbeje, thank you very much indeed. SABC News political editor Mzwandile Mbeje. Just looking at some of those hot topics surrounding the political landscape in South Africa during this past week.